cameras with the NSA.
There is something real here.
Did you believe that our government is in possession of UAPs?
Absolutely, based on interviewing over 40 witnesses over 4 years.
And where?
I know the exact locations, and those locations were provided to the Inspector General and some of which to the intelligence committees. I actually had the people with the first-hand knowledge provide a protected disclosure to the Inspector General. Biologics came to some of these recoveries.
Those could represent exquisite new adversary technology.
Non-human, and that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the program I talked to that are currently still in the program.
The government is covering up some level of its knowledge and understanding about what some of those things are.
The Soul Foundation, which just announced a new initiative for UFO research and policy.
It's nuts, man. I mean, we're just small-town buds who saw a UFO in the woods. I mean, now we're hanging out with the government.
Wow. What floor were you guys on?
Good evening, everybody. This is Miles Lewis. Welcome to another live edition of Anomaly-NOW, straight out of Austin, Texas. This is the weekly live news roundup show for the nonprofit 501c Anomaly Archives Scientific Anomaly Institute, headquartered here in Austin, Texas. It is Wednesday, May 1st. Mayday! 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 Yeah, as we started the show, the storms have moved in, green skies, lightning, thunderstorms, so hopefully we won't get knocked off the air. But we actually kind of have been knocked off the air, and if you're watching this live via YouTube, it's not via our Anomaly Archives YouTube channel because we've been given a strike for a video whose content does not violate the rules, despite their claim. And I'm not sure if it's an automated strike or a malicious strike from a disgruntled viewer or what, but we'll be dealing with that. But we're not allowed to stream live via our Anomaly Archives YouTube channel for a week. And so we're restreaming through our other channels, my personal YouTube channel and some others. And the other places, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, Instagram. Well, not Instagram tonight, but whatever. Anyway, more lightning. So, welcome. It is, like I said, May 1st, 2024, and it is Mayday. Goodness gracious. Anybody ever remember good old maypoles? Man, I don't know if that thunder's coming through the microphone, but there's some big blasts nearby. Yes, this is the maypole dance, historic photograph from my elementary school in the heart of Austin, Texas, Pease Elementary. I remember enacting the same in and out dance around the maypole with the streamers, among other festivities. I'm sure most of you are quite familiar with Mayday, a European festival of ancient origins marking the beginning of summer, usually celebrated on May 1st, around halfway between the Northern Hemisphere spring equinox and June solstice. Festivities may also be held the night before, known as May Eve. Traditions often include gathering wildflowers and green branches, weaving floral garlands, yada, yada, yada. And a maypole. You can read about the origins, of course, over at Wikipedia, and there's probably far better explications of its origins. But I've always found it funny that Mayday and the French version, or rather the emergency Mayday, 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 is an emergency procedural word used internationally as a distress signal in voice procedure radio communications, used as a signal to a life-threatening emergency primarily by aviators and mariners, and has its origins in the 1920s from Frederick Stanley Mockford, officer in charge of a radio at Croydon Airport, England. He'd been asked to think of a word that would indicate distress and would easily be understood by all pilots and ground staff in an emergency. Since much of the air traffic at the time was between Croydon and Le Bourget Airport in Paris, he proposed the term Mayday, the phonetic equivalent of the French M'aides, help me, or M'aider, a short form of Venez m'aider, come and help me. The term is unrelated to the holiday Mayday. It also reminds me of merde. All right, well, if you're unfamiliar with the Anomaly Archives, or if you are and want to dig into our archives, you can go to anomalyarchives.org, where we have all kinds of information about our organization, its collections, and its past, present, and future. And you'll find links there to our Flipboard, which takes you over to flipboard.com/@Anomaly Archives, where you can find thousands and thousands of articles. Lots of fun stuff as always. And I'm going to just briefly touch on some of the articles that of note from the last week. Not all of them the most timely, but fun and interesting, I hope, for your edification. Over at newfork.org, that's NUFORC.org, National UFO Reporting Center. Very interesting collection of reports, dramatic triangle sightings, 396 new reports posted. This is from April 28th over at newfork.org. The National UFO Reporting Center databank has been updated with 396 new reports received at our center since March 13th. Goodness gracious. To say things have been dramatic in the skies would be an understatement. Here are some of the best recent sightings. So there's this one of a Dorito chip-shaped black triangle with dim lights that the witness described as trying to emulate the stars and thus being semi-camouflaged. It hovered silently at an altitude of 8,000 feet, adorned with 16 lights that mimicked starlight, blending seamlessly into the night sky. Despite moving slowly, the object quickly exited the viewer's line of sight without traversing the horizon, instead appearing to ascend directly into orbit. The sighting, which lasted about 35 seconds, originated south-southeast of the observers and moved westbound from Air Force Special Operations Command Hurlburt Field. The event was promptly reported to Hurlburt Field security forces to ensure both public and military safety. And then there's another one from back in March 13th. Idaho Falls, Idaho. A solitary observer experienced a brief but memorable sighting of an unidentified flying object. The observer, who was outside tending to their dog, there's those reporters, UFO investigators who have commented that it seems like a lot of people see UFOs while they're out walking their dogs or tending their rabbits. The object, adorned with 7 bright lights in a V formation, traveled overhead from north to northeast in a swift, silent arc, covering the observer's field of view in approximately 1 second. And then this other report, which actually has photographs and is another presumably triangle report. February 16th, 2 pilots flying approximately 100 miles south of Fayetteville, North Carolina, observed a remarkable event. At 19:04 local time, they witnessed a massive triangular craft roughly the size of a football field, maneuvering approximately 32,000 feet below their airliner, which was cruising at 36,000 feet. This black craft, surrounded by a noticeable aura of haze, was equipped with 3 white lights positioned at its corners and a central red light at the rear, which turned off after about 30 seconds. Despite its size and proximity, about 3,000 to 4,000 feet from the aircraft, it was not detected by the onboard radar or the Traffic Collision Avoidance System, TCAS. Is that TCAS? Is that how they say it? The sighting, which lasted between 2 to 3 minutes, ended as the craft appeared to emit a static discharge and then vanished into the night, leaving the witnesses unsure if it had departed or simply gone dark. And if you click through to the report, I think they have all the photographs there presumably from their aircraft. I guess that would have to be the case. As with so many of these, it makes me wonder, will Mick West and his crew quickly debunk this? Perhaps. But you can read more about that over at the Newfork and UFORC.org website, which has been in operation for a long time collecting these kinds of UFO reports. A good friend, Shane, brought my attention to another post over at the Eyes on Cinema YouTube channel. It was actually posted a year ago and is related to a case that as soon as he just started describing it, I recalled from like 10 years ago. Sure enough, back in, what was it? Yeah, 2010, July 25th, 2010, Mac White and I probably mentioned this. I haven't re-listened to the episode, but on our episode 123 of the live PsyOp radio show, we definitely had that link to in our news. And my recollection was that this was a pretty quickly debunked as a hoax or a misidentification of some simple object. But this collection of photos is interesting. I don't think I'd seen most of these. And then at the very end, as my friend Shane brought to my attention, is a video clip purporting to be, and there we go. There is this purported video of the same series of photographs, all from different angles. So if all of these have been validated, that is pretty interesting. I still gotta wonder though, is this just something in the haze, obscured by clouds? Not sure what to make of this. Anyway, I'll put the link in the show notes. and you can judge for yourself. Again, this is over at the Eyes on Cinema website. Oh, and this is, so there's 2 pieces of video here. That one from a distance with the light shining down and some other lights moving around the cigar-shaped object, the long line of light, and then this one where it seems to have moved behind that. See that at the end, the light seems to rotate and then it seems to shoot up, but honestly, that just does not look very convincing to me. But like I said, I have to revisit my old PsyOp radio show number 123 and see what we said about it back then. The link in that episode has since long been dissolved. I had to go back to the archive.org to find it. Another link that you'll find over at our Flipboard is a pretty deep dive that I'm not really qualified to go into, but it's still very intriguing. The Radio Misterioso group posted this from the spacefed.com, International Space Federation. Gravity wave signals are being analyzed to detect gravitational memory effect. And what, as far as I can tell, this just basically is just the probable evidence to prove that gravity leaves its mark in space-time and thus can create a sort of memory. This is probably a bad analogy, but I'm thinking of how you can look at tree rings and learn about past times through aspects of those rings. It's probably a very faulty analogy, but very intriguing. Briefly, it says, an ongoing meta-analysis of gravitational wave signals may soon prove that space remembers. Permanent memory imprints in space-time may soon be detected, which will be a validation of Nassim Haramein and our research team's prediction that space has the property of memory, in which we described how the informational imprint of memory in space is what holographically generates time. That is to say that 4D space-time is a hologram of a 3D voxel information network, as well as ordering properties underlying dynamics of organized matter. I don't know what any of that means, but I was immediately reminded of John Keel commenting in one of his famous books, probably UFOs Operation Trojan Horse, but perhaps another book, where he just offhandedly mentions how the USGS, Geological Survey, had back decades and decades ago mapped the geomagnetic anomalies, including gravity anomalies across the United States. And he felt that might actually be very useful information in the study of weird phenomena, UFOs, paranormal, etc. So immediately conjures that maybe no direct connection to that, but I thought that I'd direct your attention towards that. Meanwhile, over at the Houston Chronicle, chron.com, have you seen the strange red glow in the Texas night sky lately? Here's what it is. It's a red glow. See? There you go. You've seen it. You've seen the red glow. So, unsurprisingly, this does have a very down-to-earth, but actually an up-in-the-air explanation. It's related to SpaceX and Starlink, I believe. The article states, when the deorbiting Falcon 9 rocket engines release water and carbon dioxide into the upper atmosphere, a series of chemical reactions produces the red light, similar to the shade often seen in auroras, according to spaceweather.com. The increasingly common reaction, known as the SpaceX aurora, has been spotted above Texas before. Quote, we are seeing 2 to 5 of them each month, Stephen Hummel of the McDonald Observatory in West Texas previously told the website. I have not seen this yet, but I'd be intrigued to see a red glow in the night sky. Okay, moving right along. Meanwhile, over at davidmetcalf.wordpress.com, that's the official website of David Metcalf, who you may recall from any number of awesome interviews, online posts, his work with Diana Pasulka, etc., and Jeff Kripal and others. Exploring the Outer Edges of Society and Mind is the blog, and this particular entry is, I have seen what I call a UFO, notes from a local UFO seminar. And it basically all starts with him seeing a post of a photo of a flyer that reads UFO Seminar, Saturday, February 10th, 5:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. Old Colbert Elementary Auditorium in Colbert City Hall. Gives the address there in Colbert, Georgia. And then it ends with free seating for first 300 people, ! Obviously expecting a lot of folks. And David sets the tone with his introduction to all this, talking about his expectations of this almost possibly being a bait and switch kind of religious revival. And he gets there, and here's what he has to say. Entering the auditorium, the first thing that I saw was an electric piano on the stage with an older man sitting by it, flipping through a book of sheet music. There were 2 large open Bibles near the soundboard on stage, all details confirming that this was indeed an evangelistic event. And for the first time since deciding to go, I began to wonder if my fortitude was up to the task of sitting through it. Thankfully, the host began talking with some folks in the front about how he enjoyed watching Ancient Aliens on the History Channel, and from what I could hear, that was a core component of how he was working to understand his UFO sighting. Having written about and studied the effect that Ancient Aliens has had on popular belief, this alone was worth the free admission. Citation later in the article. So I settled in and enjoy the hymn medley that the piano player had begun working through. With the lack of detail surrounding the event, many assumed that it was going to be a chance for locals to share their personal experiences. The revival angle left many attendees feeling they'd been subject to a bait and switch. They came for UFOs and got an hour-long hymn medley played on an electric piano, leading into a heady mix of quote-unquote listener stories style personal experiences interspersed with revival testimonials and evangelism. All kicked off by Riley's own personal account of seeing a UFO one night with his wife when they were returning from church. There were about 40 to 50 people in the auditorium for the first portion of the seminar. A number of people had a chance to share their UFO sightings before the religious tensions grew to the point where most of the attendees left in anger and frustration. A woman from Savannah shared a sighting that she had as a child, which included a missing time element. A man who grew up in Huntsville, Alabama, discussed the prevalence of UFO stories surrounding Rocket City. Another woman discussed an experience she had when she was younger of staying with a rural family whose property was known to have nightly orb and light phenomena. Overall, a very nice mix of personal accounts. However, for those who had opened themselves up to the vulnerability of sharing their personal experiences, the Bible-only framing of it as being most likely demonic encounters was not exactly comforting. The expectation from the host that this discussion would lead to religious conversions didn't help to create an environment of open exchange. There's much more here, and there's also I believe, a recording of the event that's linked to over on David's YouTube channel, so you might want to check that out. Meanwhile, we came across this, the Cambridge scientist who thinks he's just discovered alien life. This is a YouTube clip from LBC. Not sure what does LBC stand for? Not sure. Anyway, Professor Niku Madhusudhan, sorry to mispronounce your name, Professor Niku believes he has discovered alien life on an exoplanet 120 light years away from Earth. Speaking to Tom Swarbrick, he puts the chances of there being life on the faraway planet at 50-50. At the time of upload, the James Webb Space Telescope was observing the planet, and the analysis will take a few months. It follows the discovery of carbon dioxide on the planet it scans last year. It's just interesting hearing this astronomer, scientist, describing how excited he was when he realized what he was seeing and how he lost sleep, allegedly, for a week in grappling with this, and I assume trying to check and recheck his work. So very interesting. Another possible evidence for extraterrestrial life. It may just be something, the beginnings of life. Who knows? But on the heels of that, or actually around the same time, an unrelated announcement over at telegraph.co.uk, quote, "The announcement we found alien life could be just a couple of years away," unquote. Lisa Kaltenegger is an expert on the hunt for extraterrestrials and says the biggest surprise would be if there's nothing out there. This is posted on April 25th, and you can read that over at telegraph.co.uk, though it looks like it might be paywalled. Meanwhile, folks like John Oliver over at Last Week Tonight on HBO, Max, whatever, has done about a 26-minute bit on UFOs. I was tipped off to this by UFO writer, history professor Greg Gigian, whose book is coming out in June, and there are various references. You can see the cover of the book shown a couple different times throughout this. And of course, John Oliver, is doing his usual stick, making lots of jokes and quips about this, but it's a fairly thoughtful examination of the subject of UFOs and the fact that in some ways it needs to be boring. And I don't necessarily completely agree with this, but I get his point that oftentimes, science is not sensational. But there's some interesting clips in here you might want to check out. This is all available for free on YouTube, the dreaded YouTube. And yeah, you'll want to maybe check that out. Of course, this is itself gotten some coverage, like over at the Daily Beast. John Oliver uncovers the totally rational explanations for UFOs. Anyway, so there's definitely a few interesting gems there that you might want to check out. Moving right along, we wrap up here. I came across this 6.5 minute little news bite from the BBC about a new Brian Eno documentary called, I forget what it's called actually, but the clip that I'm showing here is called "Watch the Movie That Rewrites Itself." And of course, Eno has quite the reputation of being a very creative person and who often talks about the creative process, and who informed, of course, where is it? Before the UFO Tarot, there was the oblique strategy cards, and these were very similar in idea to the creativity cards, the oblique strategy cards of Brian Eno. Anyway, this new documentary is different every time, so you'll never actually see the same documentary twice, allegedly. I imagine they've got to be recording these created on the fly by this AI software, but it's just part of an endeavor to make a documentary in the same kind of creative way that embodies the creativity of this very creative musician, artist, Brian Eno. Anyway, there were things about this news bite clip that just kind of got me thinking about, again, the connection to strange phenomena and UFOs, and much in the same way that the cards were an attempt to do. So you may want to take a look at that. Lastly, completely changing gears. Sometime back, I learned about a weird behavior by an unassuming little critter, and it reminded me of something. It's a couple of somethings, and it's probably a superfluous connection, but I had to share this with you. Over at Texas Monthly, beware the handstand of the spotted skunk. When provoked, it springs off its hind legs like a tiny Simone Biles. Look at that cute little thing. But isn't that the weirdest looking thing? Like seeing that hobble towards you. First of all, I immediately think of Kachina dolls. It reminds me of a Kachina. I guess the poofed out tail as a potential headdress, and its back legs as these weird little arms, and the spots on the base of its tail looking kind of like where eyes would be. Or actually, it kind of reminds me of is it Mr. Boogedy from Nightmare Before Christmas? Anyway, yeah, so apparently this skunk, it likes to do this to threaten predators. And of course, the speculation being that it's doing it to appear bigger, but it also may allow it to spray its stench a little more easily. But if you follow through, there's a little video. It's not very good, but this night vision video showing one of these critters, you really don't get a good shot of it, but it gets up on its hind legs and then it starts hopping towards the camera. But okay, so this again, look at that. It just reminds me of the first time I ever saw a photo of one of these things. I was immediately reminded of, do you remember there's this video, I think it's supposed to be in Mexico, it's a nighttime footage along a tree-lined road, and it's purportedly a gnome running across the street in front of these very shocked and terrified witnesses. And I've never seen a good debunking of that video. Not that it requires any, but something about this skunk standing on its hind legs with its poofy tail reminds me of that. It's a loose connection, but there's lots of loose connections up here. Tap's head. All right, folks. The rain's starting up again. I want to ensure that I don't get electrocuted, but I hope you all stay safe. Take care and have a great week. And we'll be back on our YouTube channel per usual, and I'll be able to upload this again later. We're going to contest their strike against us. It's ludicrous. I could say a lot, and I'm not going to say anything else. But thank you for joining us, and be safe out there. Talk to you soon.